Let's get started on Winter Light. Here's the photo I took that got me excited to paint this piece. In Photoshop, I intensified the colors of this and made it more high key. This painting is begun with nickel azul yellow, which is the most transparent, bright yellow you can get in acrylics. After adding third lines onto my canvas that I can follow along on my photo, I began the drawing with a pastel pencil. This is a little bit of a reddish color. The pastel pencils are nice because they wipe off, and when I'm doing something that's a light surface like this, the white chalk I sometimes use is too light. And also on this, because of the high key nature of the painting, I didn't want to risk having any pencil lines show up later. To begin to block in these tree trunks, I decided to use a color that's a little duller but yet analogous with the yellow. I'm careful to do vertical and horizontal marks, plus to make sure that the marks are broken. I don't want to join up all these shapes. I find it much more interesting to use these type of scratch marks. Keep going and take your time to create interesting placement of these marks and to make sure that all the marks are a little bit different and the space between have varying intervals as well. I'm using a fair amount of acrylic medium added into this quinacridone gold to make it a soupy mixture. I find it much easier to put these narrow marks with the palette knife with this kind of liquidy paint. Notice too that I'm keeping this paint fairly transparent, so it's going on as a glaze. This allows the yellow of the background to shine through the gold, and it creates a nice connectivity between the background and the tree trunks. As always, I'm paying attention to the negative space between the branches, just as I did with the knotholes in the trees. I also continue to scratch into the paint as I go along. To make the thin marks of the branches, what I do is I have that soupy mixture of paint on my palette, and I slide the knife sideways through that paint so it has a nice little edge to it, and then I place those marks on sideways with the palette knife. This is a very important part of doing this painting. We're creating a structure that's almost like a skeleton. It's upon these marks in between that we'll create the snow and the distant trees and the foreground snow as well. This is the main design. This is the linearness of what attracted me to the painting in the first place. I also love the spaces and the puzzle pieces made by the branches. Because I enjoy the process of glazing, I'm using a Chromium Oxide green to begin here, and it's been tinted with titanium white. Once this color is dry, I will take nickel azul yellow and glaze it, turning it into a lovely yellow green. Another way to make your painting look interesting is to have opaque against transparent passages. So this opaque paint we're applying now looks really great against that transparent gold color that we put down earlier. I'm being careful not to cover up all the paint that's underneath, either those dark marks I've made or the yellow paint in the background. While I have this tint of chromium green oxide on my palette, I'm going to continue looking for other places to put this paint. There are some trees in the background, or tree trunks, that are in this color, and also there's some distant trees as well. Some of this green I'll probably leave in the color that it is because it's going to look very cool against the warm yellows once I glaze those tree trunks. For the warm side of the tree, I'm adding Quinacridone Red that has been tinted with titanium white. So I'm placing it in a few spots here and there. My goal is to glaze this as well with a nickel azul yellow, so then we'll have this beautiful yellow green and then some nice warm yellow orange passages. To begin blocking in the snow, I've taken phthalo blue and its complement of naphtha red light. Another choice would be pyrrole red light or cadmium red light, plus I've added white to tint it. I'm looking for all the areas that I want to have in this color, placing it, doing negative space painting, and again, moving my hand around in different directions to create interesting marks. I'm also leaving behind some of that yellow on which I can place other colors after. In my mind's eye, I'm imagining the direction of the ground underneath the snow as I place the marks. Once I'm happy with the placement of the blue grays, I'm mixing a Quinacridone Red and White together, and I'm looking at all the yellow areas of the snow and placing this red there. I'm still trying to leave little tiny bits of that yellow background showing through. Now comes a really fun part. This is the first glaze of nickel azo yellow. You can see that that chromium oxide green that was tinted with white turns into a lovely yellow green. Next, I'm taking titanium white plus a tiny little bit of nickel azo yellow to create a warm white. Here I'm placing it on the top parts of where the snow bumps would be. For this background area where the light is really hitting, I'm placing pure titanium white. I will glaze this later. I'm further taking tints of the phthalo blue, the quinacridone red, and the chromium green oxide, to which I've added quite a bit of medium, and I'm putting this soupy mixture onto the background, scratching into it while it's still wet. Because acrylics dry quickly, you want to do this in sections so that you have that opportunity to scratch back to the yellow background. This is a great way to vary your color every inch. I'm ready now to darken the shade areas of these aspen trees. This is dioxazine purple that has been thinned down with acrylic medium, and I use GAC 500 by Golden. I'm using a pointed color shaper to scratch into the paint while it's still wet. I've slowed down the video speed here so that I can show you that I do take my time with placing these marks. It's a very delicate affair. I'm holding my palette knife quite flat to the surface of the canvas so I can catch the bumps of the fabric. Though I don't often use a script brush, it comes in very handy for drawing in thin, delicate lines. We're ready to add some of the background trees and trunks using chromium oxide green plus white. At a later stage, we'll be going over this with a glaze of zinc white, which is translucent. I've loaded a 1/4 inch flat synthetic brush with titanium white, and I'm placing this color on top of the tree branches. I'm adding a slightly darker value to the background using quinacridone gold. Add a cool glaze of Hansa Yellow Light onto the lit snow, as well as the top left corner of the sky. Also glaze a tiny bit in the foreground snow with that same yellow. Have a moist rag or paper towel ready to go to wipe off any excess glaze color. Here I'm glazing the background distant trees with a glaze of zinc white. Zinc white is a semi-transparent white, so it's not going to completely cover up the paint that I see underneath. It's just going to soften a little bit and make it a little bit more snowy and distant feeling. Here I'm continuing to push back the background with that glaze of zinc white. Some of the final touches to add little dots of white snow on top of the bumps of the aspen trees. I'm taking my time with this, making smaller and bigger dots. We're almost done. I'm going to take a bit of that zinc white and put it on top of these darker trees on the right hand side, just to push them back a bit so they don't fight with the main tree in the front. Okay, that's it for this painting called Winter Light. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks so much for watching. Subscribe for notice of new videos. Take care.